Hi, this is Carrie
Hi.
Kaufman here, and I have a special guest I'm interviewing today, Mike Quinn. Mike's been a friend of mine for about 15 years, as well as a mentor to me personally in lots of different ways. And Mike is an expert on developing leaders. He runs nonprofit organizations, has for several decades that serve around San Diego, but even globally. And as he's progressed through his role as a leader, he's now almost full-time devoted to developing more leaders. So he's an expert on creating leadership coaching within an organization, building up people from within. So I just wanted to have a little chat with you, Mike, and see what are some of the tips that you've learned for that maybe businesses could apply as they take people who are good performers, good members of the organization, loyal people, but maybe don't have a lot of leadership or management experience. How do you bring those people up in the leadership capacity?
Yeah, well, that's a giant question. I think one of the keys is for business owners, particularly as they're growing, like especially if they've essentially planted or launched their business, and then they start to gather employees, and then time goes on, and they get more and more success and more employees. Sometimes it's actually an issue internal to the owner. In that you have to deal with your own insecurities with regard to developing leaders, because it does presuppose that I know what I'm doing,
Right.
right? I mean, it presupposes that I know how to be a good leader. So, self-reflection is super important. Being a learner personally, like for myself as a leader, because I can't give away what I don't have, and I do give away what I do have. So and we all have dysfunction and function, right? We're all a mix of kind of good, bad, and ugly. And so it's a personal journey where you first have to journey on the layer of leadership. And there's just tons of obviously good material out there that addresses those things, as you well know. So it's first a personal journey, because I can be scared. I can be scared, like I maybe can tell someone how to perform a task, or how to do a certain, how to learn how to be a better salesperson, or whatever um, you know, their job may be. But helping them to develop as a leader is sort of a different thing. And
Yeah.
so I call it 3D coaching, and it's not unique to me. It's a very common method of coaching, but it's a discover, develop, dream. So when I
Discover,
meet with,
develop, dream.
yes,
Okay.
they call it the 3D coaching
Okay.
method. And the problem is, a lot of times when we get into coach mode, we tend to be a teller. Like,
Mm.
we tell people what to do.
Yeah.
We tell them where to go. We tell them how to do what, as opposed to this approach. So the discover, develop, dream. Discover means I'm going to spend, a few minutes asking you about your life. Like, how's it going if they're married? How are you doing with your marriage? If they have kids, how are you doing with your kids?
Mm-hmm.
And, I keep track of these things. So that I am actually building this relationship, because relationship, obviously everything's about trust. And
Yeah.
so, trust in a relationship is super important to long-term leadership development. I would argue it's one of the most important things. And when you discover weekly, or whatever your pace is with a particular leader or employee, whether it's weekly or biweekly or monthly, when you're discovering with them, you're actually telling them, and you are, I mean, this isn't fake. Again, it has to be legit, okay?
Mm.
You're actually telling them you care about their life, not just what they do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then the develop part is often attached to the discover, because you can ask them, like, what's the biggest challenge you face this month in work? And you can segue from home and then to work. So what's one of the big challenges you're facing at home? And then they'll tell you, okay, and then I'll keep that in mind, and be thoughtful with regard to that. How about work? What's one of your biggest challenges this month or this week with regard to your SMART goals, or whatever? And then you segue into the development part. So you're really scratching where they itch. And then you, as the leader, though, you have to listen to them, of course, and care about how they perceive their world. But you, as the leader, you have the 30,000-foot view. So you have to be persuasional. I call it persuasional leadership. Or you have to be persuasional in the development part, so that they're developing also not only in ways they see, but in ways you see. And that's the develop part. Okay. And then
So if you
is
ask them what
what?
some of their big challenges are, and you have observed challenges, right, for them, you've observed what their challenges are, those might be different, what they think their challenges are and what you see their challenges are. Is that what you're saying?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you kind of got to
Yes.
bridge the gap and get them to see what you see.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I use three terms. Two of them are very common in leadership, graduate work, and all that. One is called transactional leadership, which is very, transactional. Obviously, kind of speaks for itself. It's sort of top down. It's sort of tit for tat. It's, whatever. It's almost coercional leadership, which I'm not a fan of. So, I mean, sometimes you have to be rather direct, okay? But transactional leadership always has to evolve into what they call transformational leadership. And that's where the person is acting like an owner. They're acting like they're acting like they are a part of everything and they get it. And there's a lot of trust there and all that. What's not given a lot of attention to is how do I get somebody, that I'm leading from transactional leadership to transformational leadership? And I call this persuasional leadership. And if you apply what I said, the 3D approach, which is discover, develop, dream, you're always persuading them to act like an owner, act like a partner, and so that they see the world this way.
Huh. So how do you bridge that gap if they don't see what you see? And maybe they don't realize a problem, like as one of my mentors said, you can't see when you got toilet paper stuck to your own shoe. It takes an outside perspective to see that. Any tips on how to transition that conversation to get them to understand without going into telling or criticizing mode?
Yeah, well, I would encourage people who are watching. It goes to values of your business. Okay, so one of our core values is, well, one of them is do it together, and then the other one is
make it better.
Okay, so if in my world, making it better is a part of what it means to be involved in my nonprofits.
Yeah.
And so with that set up, you have to have then, again, it comes back to this persuasional leadership where you see the person that's got the paper on their shoe and you ultimately get there, but you have to build trust to get there. So consistency of meetings, consistency of making it better both ways, by the way, in terms of leadership. Like, I want to make my employees feel safe to actually critique me. So I'll often ask the question, is there anything you see in the way I'm leading or the way I'm trying to help you that's kind of jacked up or, that isn't good? So then that bridges the question for them to actually ask you.
Right.
That's the perfect place.
Yeah.
And then you want to tell them, again, you kind of sandwich it. You're doing this really well. This needs some work. You're doing this really well, right? So you kind of sandwich everything. Again, persuasional leadership, because, and the more trust you have, the more relationship you have, the more you can be courageous enough and truth-telling enough to actually get legitimate change as much as possible.
Right. That's awesome. Are there any common mistakes that you've seen when you've observed other leaders trying to develop the next person, their successor perhaps? People doing it wrong.
Well, of course. And I've been doing this long enough to have done about everything wrong you can do. So I'm an expert on wrong also. Because, as you said in your introduction, I've been doing this for decades. Thank you very much.
Only a couple, just a couple decades.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I've made all the mistakes. When I talk about what I know, it's also telling you what I had to learn because I didn't do it this way.
Sure.
Like, there was a time in my life and in my career path where I was quite transactional. Once upon a life, I was in the Army during the end of the Vietnam War. So, when you have that as your background, as a young man, in my case, young woman, young man, you can, especially now in those days. Now, the military has grown a lot in the regards we're talking about. Having said that, I was cut from a cloth where you kind of tell. Leaders tell. Yeah. They deliver orders. Everybody else snaps to it. And I had to grow out of that. And, I learned by doing it. I was like a natural leader, and people would obviously just follow me because of this gift. that I believe God gave me. But they would actually naturally follow. But what would happen is I would hurt people without knowing it, or even being attentive to it. And it took me some years actually to develop clarity. A marriage is a great thing for me. My wife Teresa has been enormously helpful in this regard. She was an educator by profession, but again, self-reflection. A lot of times, if you aren't walking in the self-awareness, there's dead bodies behind you. Your business could be growing.
Right.
You could be making millions upon millions of dollars, but you're leaving dead people behind you. You're leaving
carnage,
hurt people behind you. And I get in any organization over a protracted period of time, you simply are going to have people that get wounded for different reasons. Some your fault and some not.
Yeah.
Some their fault.
Yeah.
But I had to learn how to be more and I have to do it. I mean, I have to do it all the time. Like I have to do it every day.
Yeah.
It's not something you get away from.
Yeah. Now we're in a unique situation, obviously, right now as we're talking. Reason we're doing this via Zoom, right? We're all on, lockdown, so to speak, together. Anything specific to this time? Like you're leading, tons and tons of people all in a virtual environment now, which is new for you. Anything specific that you're doing in leadership development in this current environment?
Well, it's interesting environment. There's so many nuances to it that are important. One is, of course, younger staff and people that we interface with tend to be much more adept at being online, if you will, than someone older. And so now I've had to keep up. I've been doing online stuff for a long time. Having said that, and so one of the most important things I did about 3 weeks ago, as soon as COVID-19 I could tell it was coming. I hired a consultant who was an expert on the arena of how to basically be online and how to accomplish that. Because one of the struggles for our organization has been developing hundreds and thousands actually of people to be comfortable with an online environment that they're not normal. It's not normal maybe for a lot of them. And one of the keys in this environment, particularly because of the fears associated with it, is the continuing and the consistency of relationship building, and because they're scared and they need care. Like everybody's employees right now and everybody's clients and everybody's customers need more care right now. That's a given. So how are we as leaders facilitating that care? And that has been an enormous workload that's not really normal like in the last month or so. I mean, like none of us were ready for this.
Right. You've got to try 10 times harder to maintain the level of relationship and interpersonal care than you would if you could, see somebody walking down the hall and have your regular meetings.
Exactly. And some people, depending on their disc or their Myers-Briggs or how they're wired, by God or whatever, some people naturally see, I guess I would say, the need for connection and the power of everything we've been talking about up to this point. They get that, and others don't necessarily see the necessity of it.
Right.
Especially in COVID-19 world. They can become reclusive and not very caring because they're scared.
Right. And overwhelmed.
Okay?
Yeah.
It sort of depends on if you're dealing with your clients or your staff.
Right.
Okay. So we're just being attentive to that on both those levels, which I'm sure all your business owners, they have staff, but then they have clients.
Yeah. I've been encouraging all my clients, make a list of what are the most important relationships that you have right now that you absolutely need to get you through this time. You need them, they need you. And the plan for each could be individualized. How you're reaching out to certain employees or customers or other suppliers or strategic alliances. It's all relational. You have to have a plan for each one of them that might be unique.
Years in the last few weeks, obviously, I do it every time. I do it all the time anyway. But I have ramped up that just to get best practices because remember, one of my core values is make it better. But one of the things that we've many of us have been talking about is that all of our employees, all of our staff are actually applying for the future position.
Right.
In other words, I'm confident, mine already has, we've had a contraction in staff. But even those staff that you keep, you have to see them, and you don't want to say this to them because you don't want to scare them. I'm just saying, is going to hit us in about 2.5 months when the whole SBA thing gets done, and we return to quote normal, whatever that's going to look like. So it's important for owners to be watching their staff and their teams and even their clients, whatever, as to who they'll ultimately keep. Like as an organizational leader, I don't know what the capacity of the various listeners would be, but let's say they're doing $20 million a year, whatever. What are their goals? Who's going to take them, of their staff, who's going to take them from 10 million to 20 million? Because that's, obviously I'm in a nonprofit world, so it's a little bit different.
Right.
But in a for-profit world, you have to think like this right now. Now, Jack Welch would tell us that we always have to think about this every year.
Right.
He's his old deal, right? And I'm not endorsing that or saying whatever. I'm just saying right now that is a real issue.
Yeah.
Because you're likely, many of the listeners to this are going to contract in order to expand.
Yes.
And that's brutal. And it takes great courage and great care.
Absolutely.
And great candor.
Yeah, I've had a lot of clients face that, thankfully. For the most part, I think about as positive as it could possibly go because of the care in the relationship that was poured into those relationships up until now.
Yes.
Where their employees are supportive and understanding and wanting to do what they can to support the business, or even if it means they're reducing their hours or whatnot. So that's a great sign that you've already had great leadership in place, but it's never too late to begin. I think now is a great opportunity for leaders who've maybe not invested in their staff in the way that they wish that they would have up until now, that now in a time of crisis, uniquely, we have an opportunity to make a huge impression, make a big impact on somebody's life, and hence, their loyalty and productivity and all those other benefits that come along with having earned that.
Yeah.
So.
When it goes well, it's wonderful. If I could address when it doesn't go so well.
Yeah.
For a minute. Because I've had to let one particular staff person go, and it was kind of brutal. And part of it was my fault, part of it was his fault. But when you go through that experience, you have to, again, self-reflection is super important. So you have to be comfortable with the truth. But you as the leader, you're going to know more about the truth than the employee, okay? So don't lose your mind there. You can lose your mind right there. There are always lessons when you have to, let somebody go. But, as you carry yourself with character and, compassion and courage, as you lead this way, you have to say to yourself, you have to let yourself off the hook. You have to say, okay, I like to give myself a grade. Like, what grade do I give myself? Was it an F? Because that's what the employee's saying.
Right. You mean for that day, for that conversation, or just in your relationship with them overall?
You can apply it to the coach yourself.
I see.
And it's a very good, honest exercise. So if I don't like to get C's. Like when I was in college and graduate school, I don't think I ever got a C. And, I graduated magna cum laude, I think it was called. And so, like I don't like anything except an A. But in life, you get a B. And sometimes a C.
Yeah.
And if you get an F, fine, so you need to take that course again. But, it's good to kind of keep your head up and not let something wound you so badly that it takes you back in leadership.
Absolutely. Yeah. Where you then begin to second guess yourself as a leader, and it's a domino effect. It impacts the next, 5 or 10 or 100 conversations that you have after that, because your head trash gets mixed up instead of learning from it and improving.
That's
right.
Right.
Awesome. Well, I know you're incredibly busy right now in particular. I could talk to you all day. But thank you for your time today. Thank you for your impact and your mentorship in my life. personally. Some of the things that you've said today that you've applied to the leaders you're developing, you've said to me. It's like, hey, Carrie, make it better. Here's what we can do. So I just appreciate that about you because you are who you are. And I see it every day. So I appreciate that. Thank you for your time and for sharing your wisdom. If you have a final thought that you'd like to share in closing, feel free.
No, just that I thank you also for being in my life. You are an amazing coach of business leaders. I see it in you, and I see you, lead all the time. And watching you is so fun because you are such a voracious learner. And all of your leaders you're developing, that's the deal, right? They have to be voracious learners, and they have to be willing to take courageous steps to change how their leadership style is. So so that they're developing their whole life long. And when they get to the place of handing off their organizations to someone else, that's the sweet spot where we've actually developed this person that's not a mini you. They're not like in my case, mini Mike.
Yeah.
They're who they are, but you have helped them and you have put your fingerprints on them, and they will carry on the business in the direction that is awesome because you've led well. And that's my encouragement to all the people listening.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time again, and have a great day.
All right, you too.
Take care.
Bye-bye.